See a countdown. Go.
Can you regale the audience with some singing?
Oh, what a coincidence that you would ask me to do that and then leave the room. Yeah, among my few talents, singing is not. I can, not since 8th grade, second soprano, was I last singing in public, and it was very sweet, little Jackie. But those days are long gone. So now I have a radio voice that doesn't sing, but can run on and on, holding the microphone here while you are. Skyler Thomas, our gracious full-on host, has left the room, not the building. Needed a cup of coffee for what we're going to do to each other. I mean, with each other. I mean, for you, good listeners who have gathered to hear us. It's 30 seconds before 9 o'clock, but we decided to come on early. And for any of those early folk that check in, you won't come to an empty screen and wonder what's going on, when will you be here. So this is the Sky Jack podcast featuring filmmaker, activist, and the angry ecologist, one of his other names, Skyler Thomas, who is on the, let's see, other side of the screen. I think it's the left side as you're watching. He has a bull tule elk, appropriately, I suppose, wailing or bugling at the fence. How appropriate. And I'm Jack, which is Jack Gescheidt, founder of the TreeSpirit project, also a consultant, although I'm not here in that regard today because I'm not going to watch my language so much, in defense of animals, animal protection organization that has supported me in my work with tule elk. That's how we actually met. And of course, the tule elk also brought Skyler and me together to do a one-man absent, two-man podcast, which was Skyler's idea. We started one last week. This is our second show, Tuesday, November 19th. It's now 9 o'clock sharp and 46 seconds. And Skyler will be back caffeinated, as I am. And then we'll get underway talking about Point Reyes National Seashore today. So for those of you who are early, which is to say on time, which is to say earlier than the two of us, thank you for coming. We're going to be talking all about Point Reyes National Seashore and the Point Reyes National, it's a, let's see, it rhymes with ship. Second word of the compound word is ship show. How about that? I think we're deciding to keep our profanity in check so that we can not be censored or limited in audience when this goes on YouTube as a recording. So we're just getting started building an audience. So if you're listening in already, thank you so much. Spread the word. Say that Skyler and Jack will be speaking. Tuesday mornings at 9. That's our current time. We looked around for a time when everyone would be available out there in the world to watch, and quickly realized no such thing. People are too busy. And certainly there's no consensus of when people are driving, not driving, commuting, not commuting, making dinner, not making dinner, taking care of their kids, not taking care of their kids. So we've chosen a time that's convenient for us to speak. 9 o'clock Tuesday morning, Pacific time, 12 noon on the East Coast. And then we'll, obviously make this available on YouTube. This show, I should say, is being recorded and will be made available as a podcast, as the kids call them, on YouTube, on Skyler's YouTube channel. And gosh, I think that's under his Watching Humans rubric. I hear a click of a door, so it's going to be back to you, Skyler. I've been carrying this show on my back for a full 2.5 minutes, so it's all yours, big boy. And I've introduced you as well, but you can pretend I said nothing and jump right in.
I tell you what, I was listening. I didn't hear any dead air time, which I assumed would happen. Jack's voice kept going.
Yeah, I'm enjoying you, sir. You and I have, I don't know. I guess like the bull elk behind you kind of rattled our antlers together. Never been in a fight, but one could always break out. So how exciting! But I have respect for you and all the work you do.
I see Ray Cooper is with us. Hi, Ray. We miss you in the Bay Area.
Indeed. Yeah. Thanks, Ray. Ray's a vegan activist buddy of mine, hosted his own groups. And he also, actually, we spoke recently, and we both say we got involved in Point Reyes and learned about it because we saw a documentary film called The Shame of Point Reyes by Skyler Thomas himself. which really, I don't know whether Skyler even is aware, you sir, how many people, well, maybe you are, how many people saw that and got involved, became aware of the issue just because you're one little 90-minute documentary, which is months and months and months of hard work for not a lot of pay.
Like 0 would be the accurate amount there.
Yeah, well, labor of love, man, but it it's there. It's forever.
So let me tell the audience what we're going to talk about today. Two things, both legally based. We're going to talk about the fact that the elk decision, or the Park Service's decision, has been delayed for the 10th time, which is absurd and yet expected, because I've been dealing with the Point Reyes National Park Service for so long. You realize that they are an absurd organization. The Point Reyes National Cow Service is what they should be called. And we will also talk about Andrew Giacomini's intrusion into the process and what his true motivation may or may not be, which I talked about that a little bit privately or on my own thing Thursday. Because this humans with their virtue signaling and pretending that they're good people when it benefits them really gets under my skin. And Jack, you're going to be able to fill us in on these topics while people filter in. Just tell me how you're doing this morning.
Who, me?
Yeah, you.
Well, I listened to a guy named Steve Schmidt, the warning about the current ship storm out of DC for the recent election. And another guy, a brilliant guy, an Israeli author of the book Nexus. God, his middle name is Noah, and I forget it, Harari, I think, talking about how, I mean, it's not totally unrelated to what we're dealing with in the Park Service, where you have ranchers saying things that they do, which are just patently false, that they're stewards of the land. You know, that's one of those famous ones I love to skewer. They're sewers on the land. But if you lie enough and control the media, you can fool the public and then push your agenda through the government, which is co-opted in this case, well, both at Point Reyes and what's going on out of DC by powerful corporate interests, you know, out to make money, to profit, which is what's going on. It's why I think I speak for you, but I won't pretend to. But for me, I got involved in Point Reyes because I live near it. The elk are very beautiful. I was outraged when I saw your film saying what was the shenanigans going on in there, which is a nice way of saying deception and destruction, environmental degradation. And it's also a microcosm for what's going on across the world, not just this continent, with the scourge of cattle on the land. And that ties into people's diet and misinformation and myths. And, you know, we're auguring deep down into all the issues we'll get into.
Yeah. The human mind is very pliable. Yeah, my channel, this one, is very critical of the human species because we self-declare ourselves as the most intelligent, yet don't seem to be capable of critical thinking a lot of times. But we won't go down that wormhole.
Oh, yeah, we will.
Okay. Well, we will at some point. Hey, let me tell you, I'm doing better this morning than last time because I did get my jog in because I was prepared. I put on full human fight the element armor, coats and gloves and everything. It was 33 degrees the entire time that I ran. And only a couple of weeks ago, it would be too hot at the same time. And I noticed something with the trees. Usually I'm the weirdo who goes out and gathers leaves and brings them to the garden, to the yard, because I know their value. There weren't any this fall for me. And now the trees are like going, oh shit, it's already time. And I'm noticing the ground cover and all the frost on the ground and how it's not being protected from the frost via the leaves, one of nature's wonderful systems. Just a tiny, tiny, tiny example of climate change problems. The trees didn't even have a chance to do their normal processes here and prepare the ground. Not that the humans would allow that anyway with all of our relentless leaf blowing. But just a little story from the morning jog.
I heard leaf blowers. I heard leaf blowers all yesterday, and of course chainsaws. You know, whacking into trees because they're fire danger now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I mean living green trees. I don't mean dead branches under the eaves of your house. Which, yeah, sure, trim the dead branches off, but it's way more extensive than that. And I'm in Terra Linda, northern San Rafael, and I see extensive management and maintenance, vegetation management work, and it's just wildly destructive out of fear and ignorance.
Well, if you didn't get the memo, God is dumb and did not know what he was doing. and we are here to correct all of his ridiculous mistakes, such as covering the planet in trees.
Well, we are made in his image out of our infinite wisdom. And you gave me an opening for one of my little go-to quips these days. We, as you know, falsely consider ourselves, Homo sapiens, the most intelligent species on the planet. And I actually not just say, well, that's absurd, which is obvious, but I make the case that we're the complete other end of the spectrum, the least intelligent species on the planet. And I have evidence. And the main piece being, because we're not doing a whole show on this, we're the only species that is actively destroying our own life support system. And of course, we're going to take down millions of other species we already have doing so, if you believe in science and scientists and research, which I do very much so. We're the only ones that are doing that. So I would say that makes us monstrously, suicidally idiotic, not intelligent at all.
Yep. Well, we could talk about that every week. I'm not going to, because we got a good topic this week, important topic.
Yeah.
Really will be great when the people fighting for Point Reyes find this channel and come here to express their feelings on it. I previously was a plaintiff on a case. My involvement was trying to get emergency help for the elk. You were a plaintiff on that case, but there are a lot of lawsuits going on with Point Reyes. Well, maybe a lot is a strong word, but there are quite a few. And the decision to help the elk is delayed again. And you, my friend, eternally optimistic, thought
you mad fool,
were going to go a lot better. You thought things were going to go a lot better. So fill us in. What just went down?
Well, there are two lawsuits, but they're all very complicated, and they've both gone on now. One over 3 years and one nearly 3 years. One is having its 3-year anniversary. Gosh, is it? It's fine. I got to check. I think January 10th. In any case, there's the Harvard lawsuit, which was brought by Harvard Animal Law and Policy Clinic out of Cambridge. And that's specifically about the Tomales Point area, which is the reserve where the largest of 3 herds of tule elk are kept fenced in and have been since they were reintroduced to the park in 1978. I remember that because it's the year I graduated high school. And then the other case, which has got the newest wrinkle recently, is what I call the 3 orgs case, just to summarize it. And that was brought by Western Watersheds Project, Center for Biological Diversity, and the Resource Renewal Institute. And that has to do with the 2021 GMPA, the General Management Plan Amendment proposed by the Park Service for dealing with the ranch areas, which they call the euphemisms are wonderful, the pastoral zone, the place where thousands of cows ship on all over the land and pollute and contaminate the groundwater, and of course air pollution from methane, which is never mentioned when they boast about their organic methane digesters and all this other complete non-science about how it mitigates climate crisis.
So just for people listening, then
please,
the decision to take the fence down is wrapped into the 3 org one, or is it a separate decision?
That's an excellent question, and actually let's figure that out, sir. The Park Service, when they announced in June of 2023, which is a year and a half ago now. Yeah, it lose track very quickly. June of 2023, that they're initiating under NEPA law, the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA, and this was taught to me by Laura Cunningham of the Western Watersheds Project.
Well, it'd be great to have her call.
Yeah, well, she, as you know, she has been asked by attorneys to remain silent on the issue. That's the game. So anyway, they issued a NOPA, N-O-P-A, a notice of proposed action, and that was to finally take the fence down. So we activists were all excited, and it is significant. As I like to couch it, being, as you accused me, the optimist, it is the first time in 45 years, well, at the time, since 1978, 45 years, since the Park Service proposed changing their federal policy in a national park under the Department of Interior to take down that fence, which would release the largest of the 3 herds. There are 3 herds in the park. Only the largest one is behind the fence, Tomales Point, to release them out onto the rest of the park, which is fantastic. The herds would mingle, improve their health. They're getting off what is now a drought-stricken peninsula, Tomales Point, northernmost Point Reyes seashore, for people who don't know it. And The question you asked is, so that's the foundation, but why? What caused them to do that? And the Park Service doesn't say we're doing this because this and this and this. So in my opinion, I like yours, it's anybody's guess as to what brought that on. I would say it's all of the factors, the pressure of 2 lawsuits, and then there are dozens of other activists. It's not just you and me, buddy, we're all both painfully aware or joyously aware. So many more people banging the drum on this issue, calling out all that's wrong, all that's crappy, literally and figuratively at Point Reyes Seashore. So all of that together, that gestalt, says Mr. Gescheidt, is why, in my opinion, it's only opinion. Park Service is not one person you can go talk to in a pointy ranger hat and say why, is why that was initiated. And now it hasn't been implemented. It's a year and a half ago, and we're now waiting for the final decision in the NEPA process, which would say, yes, we're going to take the fence down, and presumably here's the date we're going to do it. We're all waiting impatiently now on that.
And, one of the first warning signs to the pessimist, to me, was the date that they were saying that they would make their decision, which lined up with finding out whether or not the Planet Killer would get reelected and the rancher's buddy would get reelected. I mean, the timing was just kind of weird. And now they have that information, and now maybe they're back in their meetings saying, okay, we can pretty much F this park all the way to hell now with the blessing from up above. Of course, that's me getting pretty pessimistic. So feel free to tell me how that timing didn't just work out great.
I realize, especially with the smile on my face, was for the tragedy comedy masks here. So you, as the pessimist, would say, the ranchers all along were, well, in the last couple of years anyway, when Trump was, going back for re-election, let's just stall this case out and push it into the next administration because things can change in a federal case from the government, from the White House. And me, being an optimist, would say, yeah, you're probably right.
No, you didn't agree with me.
Well, they've been stalling for a long time, and I guess I'm the optimist that still thinks the fence is going to come down. That's how crazy I am, right? Because the Park Service, in my humble opinion, again, it's another bureaucracy. You can't find out, or it is a bureaucracy. You can't find out what's really going on, who's in charge. I don't think they've ever been thrilled, especially since we brought the citizens, activists, and elktivists brought a lot of attention. I don't think they're thrilled with having, elk suffer and die in a fenced compound. But, I see them. I mean, you get pissed off at the Park Service for not taking action and being decisive leaders, which we ideally want them to be, of course. And I look at them as kind of stuck in a political middle, where they're not going to take action independently. They take their orders from on high, which is at the Department of Interior. And that's, ultimately under influence of the federal government.
Well, that would be nice, except that they are taking orders locally. They are employees of the Park Service. They are doing work on behalf of they're employees of the ranchers. And they're doing work on behalf of the ranchers, and they're doing it regularly. And if you've had, and I think you have had conversations with some of these people, like the disgusting Melanie Gunn, you will understand from listening to her that she is definitely on their side. And sympathizes with them and provides ridiculous excuses, which show that she doesn't even understand her role as a federal employee. She's talking about, you need to understand how important this land is to these people and how long they've been here and how the tradition. I'm like, that has absolutely nothing to do with your responsibility, your law, or the science involved here. So the fact that you, representing the Point Reyes National Park Service, are speaking like that is not surprising, but is disturbing. And let me tell people about the professionalism of this Park Service. We're still waiting on Freedom of Information Act documents that were requested years ago. And I think the legal window to respond to those is like a couple of months. And, I've filed some. I've spoken to other people who, like Western Watersheds or Laura, and I just gave up after a while. I'd check in with her and I'd be like, hey, so have they gotten back on this? Because, as the documentary maker, people may not believe this, but I do want to show the other side of the story and say, hey, I'm accusing them of this. So I've submitted to ask them what the answer is from their side, they don't want to give it. Even when you take the legal approach saying, hey, what the hell is happening here? We're just going to ignore the law and not respond or provide this information. And back when the first time that there was a lawsuit with this same 3 orgs, this is why I said that there are multiple ones. It's been going on and on and on. And, you could call it a reiteration of the same thing, but it's a slightly different change. We did get some Freedom of Information Act documents back then, and the Center for Biological Diversity has them up on their website, and you can go and you look, and even then it's just full of redactions and blacking out the things that they don't want you to see. Now, why would they even need to do something like that? That kind of should set off some alarm bells in your head already. Good morning, DC from the Rev.
Yeah, can we use his first name? He likes to lay low. He's a wonderful someone typing into the chat, folks. You can type into the chat as well as call in, but right now we're just having people type into the chat, so Skyler and I can go at it for a bit. But that guy, DC from the V, let's do that. That's his public name. Oh my goodness, new comments will display. Yeah, I love the good cop, bad cop perspective. Yeah, the day that I'm the good cop makes me smile. It's only a relative term, I guess. And I'm in the black shirt, go figure. So, yeah, we also didn't get to the latest juicy tidbit, which is as of October, a local attorney who's connected, whose last name is Ranch Family, filed to try to. Let me do it this way, Sky. I want to take a whack at it, then I'll let you jump in. Because he cares so much about the health and well-being and the stability of the migrant workers who work on the ranches for God knows what pay. And for all I know, they're paid really well. This is all speculation, but he has filed a motion with the court, which we're going to hear something about perhaps this Friday, the 22nd, in U.S. District Court for the Three Arcs case. Wants to bring them into the negotiations that have been ongoing for almost 3 years, saying, oh, the poor ranch workers, not just the ranchers who have leases with the Park Service to run their cattle operations, which, denude and degrade the park, but oh, the poor workers, if you, the Park Service, were to go ahead and take the fence down and eventually kick out the ranchers with the 3 org suit, which is what they're aiming to do, and they were nearing a settlement, presumably, including with the Nature Conservancy, TNC, putting up a reported $10 million to help buy them out for the second frickin' time, because they didn't leave when they first took millions of dollars in the 60s and 70s, that, oh, the poor ranch workers would be out of a job and have no place to live. And so the proposition is, we feel sorry, we, the rancher attorney who's filed this, feel sorry for those poor workers, to which I would say, and I'll let you go at it, Skyler, if you've really cared about the ranch workers, wouldn't you have said something in the last, 3 years, 10 years, 20 years, trying to get them solid wages and retirement benefits and a healthcare plan, a better place to live? I mean, anything, not a peep, nothing, nada. And now at the last minute, you shoehorn in this request, which will delay the case most likely, and they have no contract. The ranch workers have no contract with the Park Service. So it's just completely inappropriate that they have anything to do with this lawsuit. That's my short. Scott. Yeah,
I mean, the fact that it's even being considered, like, it should have just been thrown out from the absurdity. It's an employer-employee relationship, and now a national park needs to house employees that were there from private operations that are being kicked out. But I ranted about this last week. I think I told you this thought, because I was asking you what exactly is the deal with Giacomini. The fact that he is a Giacomini, I'm sorry, does not win you any favors in my book. But again, most importantly, pretending to care at the last minute makes me think that there is something else going on here. And, he could have been investigating these ranches all those years instead of someone like me doing it on my own dime and releasing the interviews with some ghastly details of how bad the living conditions were out there. These are the ranchers we're talking about, who have forced people to live in terrible, disgusting conditions for their profit margins. And now you want to turn around and pretend that they care about these people. And speaking of which, again, I'm the bad cop here. I don't want you people listening to pretend that you care either. Stop it. You didn't think once about these ranch employees until you read a headline that said, oh, wow, this is so wonderful. You pick and choose what you're going to get behind. And I'm not saying that I wish bad things upon those people, but where's this energy for other issues and other people that have problems? It's reserved whenever there's an excuse to pity something that benefits the ranchers. Giacomini could have stepped in as soon as the county finally responded to the reports about people living through raw sewage and sharing beds with raccoons and moss growing on the wall. Nope, didn't. Here it is now. Here it is now. And somehow it's going to be upon us, the people who own the park, to fit the bill for this.
So well, for me, it's the opportunity. I just assume every show should stand on its own a little bit too. So I want people to understand that the big issue here is rancher disinformation, putting themselves forth as small, family, local, historic, stewards of the land, keeping the fire at bay by beating the land down to bare dirt, and regenerative ranching on organic farms. All of that is just a huge cartload of BS.
These are millionaires. If anyone doesn't understand, these are millionaires.
Right. Well, they're also doing just fine. They're certainly land rich, and most of them, as you noted before, own property outside the park, so they can simply just move their cattle to another place. Again,
or the ranch hands. How about the ranch hands? Yeah, I said that last week. It's like these guys have so much land in Marin County and outside of Marin County. There's not a problem of finding a place to put these people if, in fact, you actually care about these people. It doesn't have to fall upon a national park that needs to be restored to its natural beauty, which is the mandate of the Park Service in the first place, which they have failed miserably to fulfill.
That's one of the reasons the Shame of Point Reyes, your film, was so powerful, and I got involved in this. It was so clear cut. If you try to go at the damaging effects of ranching in Marin County or Sonoma County, which is like driving through a war zone once you open your eyes to what you're looking at, which is land beat to dirt with no vegetation on it, no wildlife anymore, relatively speaking, to what was there before cattle were brought in. At Point Reyes Seashore, it's a national friggin' park. Everybody acknowledges that's a place where there should be wild animals roaming free, and no commercial operations, and certainly no commercial operations or businesses that pollute and degrade the land and despoil the human visitor experience. It's so egregious in so many ways. It makes one crazy. Even an optimist like me, like, what the WTF? What is going on, man? How can this?
Well, it's a rare historic opportunity for people who visit the park to see what ranching operations look like.
Well, I would say when I give tours out there, I drive people right up to the fence line because it's a great, it's one of a few places, also Abbott's Lagoon parking lot, where you can stand in one place and look out at the land, and there's a fence right down the middle of two areas. One is where cattle are, and one is where cattle are not. And if this was a Zoom, I would throw up a picture of that. I took a picture also at the fence line of the Tule Elk Reserve, and you see all this coastal scrub and coyote brush up to 5, 6, 8 feet tall, where wild animals can live and hide and do, whether that's rabbits and coyotes and deer. And then you look at the cattle pasture. It sounds nice. It's pastoral pasture, and it's dead. There's nothing there. It's just beat to the ground, and that's what cattle do. And the crazy thing is, as again, you brought this to my consciousness, buddy, when I saw Shame and whatever that was at that meetup in San Francisco. You see the rolling green hills. I moved here 25 years ago from New York, and I went to Marin, Mount Tam area, and you see these rolling green hills and think it's all beautiful until you learn that, some of it was that way, but a lot of it is beaten down by European cattle that just are industrial lawnmowers. And it's to raise meat and milk for human consumption. That's incredibly wasteful, incredibly inefficient, incredibly destructive, not particularly healthy, and is, not to go overboard, but, a main driver of the climate crisis, which is destroying the planet Earth. And that's me, the optimist. Take it away, Skyler.
Well, I was just thinking about the Shame of Point Reyes. I was in a real hurry to get it out. It was a passion piece. And I was like, my God, this is so horrible. I hope this makes a difference. I hope this can help. And so I filmed the entire thing in the winter and the spring, which means that point rays looked as good as it ever can or does look, and it still looked like crap. Now, my future work that I've done on it shows the true look of point rays ranch land, and it's beyond terrible. It's horrifying. You know, there's this illusion of something good happening when the non-native invasive grasses and thistles and other types of weeds are starting in the winter and the spring. So you look at it and like, oh, look at the green rolling hills. It's all bad. It's all bad news. And it all turns to the yellow death really fast, mixed in with, cow poop, and some areas that even the weeds won't grow back. Like they have overgrazed the area and beaten it down so badly that even plants that are described as invasive in nature can no longer come back. I mean, that's how bad the stewards of the land treat the land. The second part, you were talking about the fence, and it's a little bit because some of the land next to that fence border is not actively being ranched right now. Every now and then you don't get as drastic of a contrast as you could, because you actually have an area that's slowly starting to recover a tiny bit, and it still looks terrible. But when you have it next to land that's actively being ranched, it's literally life and then death, life and then death. And again, this is the beauty of the marriage of agriculture and nature, as even your Point Reyes National Park Service will lie to the public and say.
And now back to you, Jack, for something happy.
Yeah, this is your burden.
It's the role I was born to play. The world is coming to an end. Say something happy.
I'm going to start as you try to come up with a comeback to that depression. I'm going to put the call-in link up in case anybody has any thoughts on what on earth Giacomini's thinking, and what do you think about the fact that the Point Reyes National Park Service has delayed a decision 10 times, and even now we're not so sure that there's going to be much of a good outcome at the other end. And so if you look in the chat overlay or the chats underneath in YouTube, you'll see I just pasted the call-in link. Let me type the words call in if you'd like to, and then you'll be walked through the process of allowing your microphone and camera to be used, although you don't need to enable the camera, just enable the microphone.
Yeah, we were discussing that, the pros and cons, just because most people aren't, seated down and at their desk or a stationary place with good lighting. I think it's better without the camera, but if someone insists, go for it. We'll figure it out. I also do want to mention that, again, this Friday, the 22nd of November, because today is the 19th, there will be a hearing in federal court in San Francisco. Judge Maxine Chesney presiding, and I spoke to one of my go-to mentors on all this, retired Park Service attorney Jim Coda, who knows this stuff inside and out, and he spoke well of her, and I'm really curious to see what she's going to say about the, as we're calling it, the Three Oryx case. And anything's possible. She could demand in 30 days I want a settlement to this, and you guys are going to do it. They've been in mediation for 2 years of the 3 years case, I think, or 2.5 years. She could give another, well, it was called the continuance, which is what we call a freaking delay or postponement. It's called a continuance in legalese, I'm told. We don't know, but we can possibly, if hopefully something significant happens, rather than just, well, come back in 3 months, guys, which is just as likely as anything. We can do another show on it on Tuesday if we want. We'll see. If not, I'm sure we can come up with something else to rant about.
Okay, but so let me put you on the spot, Mr. Optimistic.
Sure, go ahead.
You got any optimism for Friday?
Define optimism. Not as dour as your view.
Better than me.
Honestly, man, part of me thinks, the activist in me, you'll enjoy this, is if it does get kicked down another 3 or 6 months and we see some rumbling out of DC about some nonsense, well, then you know what? we try no more Mr. Nice Guys. We tried it the nice way. We're going to go back out and do demonstrations in the park and cause a stir. And of course, at that point, the Park Service will be given guns and allowed to shoot us in the kneecaps or something and sent to DC to rot in jail without the right to protest, even if we're white. So who knows what's coming? I fight back on all this stuff with humor, I suppose, and creativity, which, I was 8 years old in 1968, but I saw, riots in the streets and stuff on TV when I was trying to watch the original Star Trek. And my father would come in and then in 72 put on Watergate hearings and all. And, it was a tumultuous time. We got through it. I like to think that, well, I don't know. It could even be worse. So I'm both a pessimist and I'm also an optimist at the same time. And I'm going to do what I can do and hopefully get other people to realize we can't take this lying down. Any of the nonsense, whether it was before the Trump administration. God knows the Democrats had huge problems anyway, which is why someone like a demagogue can come to power because of the problems of our democracy. But we still are huge numbers of people. And I've met Trumpers who think the elk should be released from the park. It kind of transcends politics in some ways, assuming, big assumption, people have access to reliable information. And that's the tricky part, of course, in all this.
Mm-hmm. And
yes, go ahead. Go down into the hole. Keep digging, buddy.
Well,
I'm giving you the shovel.
The Park Service is not a source for reliable information. What a horrible thing for me to say. And they could sue me if I was lying. Well, unfortunately, I've got the proof coming out the wazoo.
Well, you and I were on the same side of that one, buddy, which is the Park Service says the elk are just fine. There's plenty of water and food. And we said BS. And we did demonstrations with a large group of people. Again, my thanks to so many other activists who, are involved in this issue. And we did turn the narrative around. It took years, but the ranchers had the complete narrative. They're stewards of the land doing great stuff. And they had a right to be there and all that nonsense. And they were supposed to be there in perpetuity. They were not. Why pay them millions of dollars in the 60s and 70s if they're going to turn over their deeds, but stay on the land and keep farming, at pennies on the dollar for lease rates? It doesn't make any sense. Common sense, So we've been fighting that a long time and we'll continue.
You mentioned the polite approach and the legal approach. And one of the reasons that I don't have patience for that is that people had already been pursuing the polite approach and the legal approach before I got involved, way before I got involved. This has been an ongoing battle for a very long time. Now, when I made my film, I started calling some of these organizations. For example, I found Jim Cota's website, and I found the Restoration, Resource Renewal Institute. Mm-hmm. And there was a real sense of defeat. Like they were just like, yeah, well, it's over. It doesn't matter anymore. And I was still pissed off enough from what I saw out there that I made the film anyway. Then, if I dare say, there was a little bit of a resurgence. And boy, the Park Service has worked really hard for people not to know what's happening. So many people in the Bay Area don't even know what's happening in Point Reyes. And you know who that works out well for? The ranchers.
Yeah.
And you know who these delays work out well for? The ranchers. Because you know what a delay means? It means business as usual. It means continue doing what you were doing. If anybody actually had to suffer during these delays, like if ranching had to be halted and, no profits were allowed during this time period, I bet you the decision process would go a lot faster. But these delays are basically the same thing as extended leases. I actually need someone more positive than Jack to handle my cynicism.
Well, you and I talk privately sometimes, and I can go down and I can dig a hole deeper than yours, buddy. But in this format, we kind of choose our roles, I suppose, right?
Oh, are you saying I'm taking the easy way out by being the pessimist?
No, not at all. In fact, I was speaking with other activists yesterday. I do a lot of strategizing with activists. In fact, I was on a Zoom yesterday with 5 other activists. We had done an action, and we were talking about, how much do you be polite and try to work with the system? To which, clearly, like they'll nod and go, very nice, make your comment, and then leave the room and ignore you. So the hell with that. But then I brought up the story, which is pertinent here. I guess your film woke up a lot of people, brought in, I think it contributed. You're not going to say, but I think it contributed in a great way. I mean, me and I know 5 other people that saw that film who were involved in this issue because of the film, and it did have a resurgence. And more people came to the fore. More people wrote letters. More people came out for demonstrations. More groups got involved, and it really moved the needle to have the Park Service suggest taking down the fence. I mean, that had never happened before, despite huge dedication by Susan Ives and Chance Catrano and Ken Belay and all these people who've been around for years and years and years. Laura Cunningham. I'm not doing service to all the people who've been involved in it for a decade and banging away. God bless them. But you need a larger, a critical mass to move it forward, which finally happened. We may need another critical mass in 2025 to move this again. I just think because it's a national park, we actually have a shot at it. It's possible. That's the optimist. But I'm sorry. The point was we moved the needle in about a year or two from your film, and the congressman for the district, your hero, I say that with sarcasm, so unless you get angry at me, Jared Huffman, agreed to do a Zoom call with us activists. Wow. I mean, how many activists can say they do an action where they got a congressman to have a private Zoom with them? It wasn't recorded. I think there was 5 of us on there, kind of selected like who was going to, play nice and not just curse the guy out. And it's so interesting because we moved from doing stuff in the field where we're very critical to actually having an intimate Zoom call with a congressman who's out of DC and has power over this stuff and has a say. And you realize, I'm watching people talk and I'm like, what do I want to say here? It was I was going through this internal conflict, like, Huffman, what the hell are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. How can you say this stuff? That was a lie. It's like, I can say that. And then he'll just discount me and he'll know I'm an enemy. And that's that. Sure. And, an argument can be made to do that. The other argument is, well, now that I'm dealing with a politician who is in the business of compromise, which is not my business as an activist. As an activist, I'm going to speak, as you call it, and I agree with you, the truth. This is all a bunch of BS. Get these guys out of here. They were paid. They're destroying the park. Get them out. How do I approach a congressman? And I don't have an absolute answer to that, but I realize here I am in a position now where I can play a different role and talk to this guy and tone it down and say, would you agree to say this much, Congressman? As opposed to, how dare you, you son of a, corrupted by the businessmen and screwing the populace who put you in office. So the different roles an activist can play and how to politics and strategy and on and on and on with this nonsense.
The original lawsuit that you and I were involved in together to bring emergency aid to the elk, what year did we start that?
2020. I think the first drop was August 2020.
Okay. You understand that nothing was resolved and that was an emergency. That was an emergency case to try and help animals. And it's 2024. So yeah, activists should be pissed off because the legal system leaves animals dying and suffering, while Judge Gilliam says that we don't have enough evidence when we just drop a mountain of evidence on his desk. And that's one of the reasons I stopped being involved, is because I wanted to be able to freely start calling out some of these scumbags like Judge Gilliam. And a
federal judge scumbag. Very nice, Skyler. A nice touch.
Huffman's worse than a scumbag. Like he's a coward. He is a coward. Him just bowing down to the Republicans that were making jokes about how to best kill the elk in that Congress. In that where did that clip originate from? Anyway, I'm going down a hole here. Elizabeth Dodge, I want to read your comment. Rancher, such a cute moniker for beef and dairy industry operations. Well, and I'll go further. Beef and dairy operations is a cute moniker for planetary destruction and torture.
Thank you. I was going to say, one of the leading drivers of the climate crisis, which, by the way, just to put the screws in here, bad cop. Like, hey, folks, you can do something about the climate crisis today and about ranching today without political action, writing a letter, going to Congress, committing a ton of time. Just quit the meat and quit the dairy, especially the beef. I mean, pig too, pork, the beautiful animal, the pigs for sure, because they're gentle, intelligent creatures, smarter than your beloved dog. And I love all animals. But you can stop eating the beef, including the Neiman Ranch, organic, free-range, grass-fed, regenerative BS, contributing methane to the environment, degradation of the land, using too much of our precious water in drought-stricken California. It's just something you can do today as a consumer to be an environmentalist, not just pay lip service to it with your behavior. Just break your freaking habits.
I got to tell you, I cringe whenever the plant-based topic comes up, because I'm aware of how badly people don't want to believe in it and don't want to hear it. And that's why I created other channels, because on this channel, I should definitely embrace it. But I just got to say the absurdity of why humans won't help the planet or make a change based on just desire to put something in their mouth that they don't want to. Now, you and I are both converts, right? I mean, I was in my 40s before I gave it up, and
I was in my 50s.
Wow.
Well, that's because I'm older than you, Skyler. That's why I have gray hair. Not just because of you, by the way. So I saw the movie Cowspiracy in 2014, and then it was like, oh shit, I'm getting up on stage as a forest advocate saying, don't cut down the trees, don't cut down forests, don't deforest the Amazon. And I didn't know until watching that movie exactly a decade ago, the number one reason we cut down forests globally, especially in South America, is to raise cattle, to graze cattle for human consumption. And then, of course, to cut down more forests to raise the GMO corn and GMO soy crops to feed the cattle. As you have said famously and wonderfully, the most, I try to do Skyward, the most inefficient way to feed humans is to push vegetables through large bovines and then kill the bovines in a ridiculously brutal way. So I have no hesitation, thanks to the influence of activist Leah, I'll leave her last name off this, who's a fiery activist that, keeps working on me like, Jack, stop apologizing for it. It's just the truth. Like, people are torturing animals, hold their feet to the fire. It's okay.
These are the good people.
Indeed.
If we can't get past calling people that are doing that the good people, I don't know that we're ever going to be able to make progress.
So here's the difference in a tactic. So you're going at the people who do this, like the Park Service. I just keep going back to, that's fine. It works. It can work for some people. For me, I just want to keep speaking the truth. I'm not going to self-censor. That's the thing. And of course, yes, if you say I'm a vegan or don't eat meat, you're like, oh boy, here we go. It's like, as I was telling somebody else, Trump derangement syndrome. Oh my God, here you go, attacking him against, like, well, if a mob boss commits a shit ton of crimes, whoopsie, I cursed, a whole bunch of crimes, you call out the crimes. Oh, you're just attacking. It's like, no, I'm attacking the crimes. So, I'm not picking on people who eat it. I'm just saying, if you eat it, you're not an environmentalist. You're an anti-environmentalist. You're speeding the climate crisis.
Well, you
care about it.
You were a forest guy. You were a forest guy who converted. I was a shark guy, an ocean guy who converted. And, neither one of us were necessarily directly involved in animal advocacy, but there was still some other connection where you realize, wait a minute, this is pretty hypocritical. And I learned about how much of the ocean is dredged and sign netted and just emptied to create livestock feed.
What did it for you? What was the source? Was it a documentary or a book, or what did it?
No, it was a ongoing process. There were quite a few articles about it, and there were, I got involved with Sea Shepherd people because they were the ones who were nice enough to put me on their couch when I would go try to make these documentaries on no budget. And I'd learn a little bit here and there, and I can't remember because it was a long process. I like a lot of people, stayed in the denial stage for a very long time, despite the information being in front of me, just because I didn't want to change. The fact that the most intelligent species can lie to itself, that effectively makes me think having such a complex brain is not necessarily a good thing. We have a caller, Jack. It's Ray Cooper. Shall we take Ray?
Yes, of course. I just want to shout out to Captain, just one sec, Captain Paul Watson, who's in legal jeopardy more than ever right now, and an amazing hero of the seas and the planet. So,
what a nightmare.
Become aware about Captain Paul Watson and his work for Sea Shepherd for decades, long before I became aware. I was going to say something else, but let's have a caller on. Yes, please. Thank you.
Isn't Norway sending him to Japan where he's going to be effed for life?
I don't know the details.
So I'm trying to put this.
I hear noise. Ray, can you speak and be heard?
Ray,
Hello,
you're on.
Okay, are you there?
Yes,
sir.
Okay, great. All right, it works.
Welcome,
Hey,
Ray.
yeah, thank you very much for having me on, and it's good to see you both up there. I'm going back a couple little topics before you got into the vegan thing. It's about consensus for the opposition to the ranchers, and then, really, I think the question needs to be asked. How do we get the ranchers out? What is up there for people to get behind? Because it's about giving some people something to latch onto that they can protest against and or organize, and get momentum going. Because the problem is when you have someone who already has everything, their incentive to let to give up what they have, especially since it's a livelihood, and you can see how much they'll lie or to do whatever to hang on to it. This is very difficult. You don't want to underestimate it. And when there's a lawsuit or something like that, it that might be all you can do, but it just bogs things down. And their game is to just do nothing and throw out little delay bombs and this and that. And so you have to go back to where the biggest momentum that ever happened in this whole point race thing, in my mind, and I don't go back too much before Shame of Point Race came out, but you want to be optimistic. I think the biggest momentum came around that time. I mean, if it you want to say Shame of Point Race did it, well, it did it for me and it did it for Jack. And so then you can look at little splinter things that happened, that added to the momentum that came after that. There was a big push that I think if you're the ranchers, the most time that you were nervous was before the pandemic, that couple 3 years there where there was a lot of demonstrations. It was on a regular basis. There was a lot of momentum. And there's another thing that I think is really good news too, is there are a lot of people out there that are waiting to be organized that are against this. And the ranchers too. Another thing that's going against the ranchers is economics. Regardless of what anybody does, they're dying economically. Now, maybe we won't see it in our lifetimes. Me and Jack are about the same age, but I have a grandson and I'm hoping he's going to see a totally different environment out there. And so there is a lot of optimism. And, for me, I'm even more than Jack. I'm always optimistic, and like, if you look at Mother Nature and the simple solution of just doing nothing in nature, she'll come back. Like from this cattle, if they just got out of there, if you went back there 2-3 years afterwards, you're going to see so much stuff. And I'm just hoping that my grandchild will see that and that it will happen. But without momentum as far as organizing and, visual organizations, which I've always pushed for, but I don't do that. I'm busy doing something else. And Jack does that. That's his main thing, is putting together people and connecting ideas and organizations. And Skyler with the film, I mean, to me, that's when we were at our best. And the pandemic, unfortunately, helped the ranchers.
So Ray, hang on. Don't go anywhere. I want you into this conversation. Skyward from me. I just want to read, just because it ties in here. Elizabeth Dodge posted a comment. It's important for you to tell people that the surface waters that people come to the seashore to enjoy are contaminated with infectious bacteria that can cause severe gastrointestinal illness. The Park Service doesn't have the courtesy to even post warnings for visitors. She's 100% right, and Liz is an activist in her own right who is doing surveys, basically, wandering onto, hey, folks, did you know you're actually allowed to wander onto ranch lands? All the hundreds of miles of barbed wire fences and straight wire fences out there lead you to believe that you shouldn't. But it's public land. You're allowed to. You can't go into a rancher dwelling or harass cows. Not that anybody would, but you have access to the park. And Liz was doing that. And, one of many people who was involved in basically documenting rancher destruction of the land and then surface water contamination. She actually led to the independent water testing engineer that citizens paid for to confirm that, yeah, the obvious is true. They're contaminating the water. That is another thing we could do. It's funny. This is like watching a strategy session among activists. You could just go out there and say, okay, our next action is just going to put signs up, which the Park Service would get pissed off at and take them down. And then you'd have conversation with, well, we have to take this down. It's not authorized. Yeah, but there's pollution out here. And then the final point I wanted to make was what Ray said when we got all those people out. That was, in my humble opinion, in large part thanks to Diane Oppenheim. I always give a shout out to, because she had the idea to really focus on the elk. It was an animal, it's an emotional concern. People can picture the elk. They see the elk that was suffering and dying, starving to death. It was captured, of course, by Skyler as well, and many films after Shame as well. It was, you got to find touchstones, ways in emotionally to really upset people. And then, as Ray is saying, activate them. There are lots of people who would love to be involved again. And I'm hoping by the end of this year, if not this Friday, we had a little bit more information, or if the fence came down, that would be a huge emotional, like a win, a partial win. And then we could really go back to full-time banging on getting the major polluters out of the park.
Well, it's frustrating because there's so many topics, so many things that the Point Reyes National Park Service is doing wrong that, yeah, I mean, we could spiral off just touching on how many of them there are. Liz brought up one of many that are good ones. And once again, it was citizens who had to take it upon themselves to do something that the Park Service should have done. You know what? If the ranchers are going to call themselves stewards of the land, they should have been doing it. But instead, they're the ones that are creating the problem and don't want anyone to know about it. And again, it goes back to me saying that the Park Service and the ranchers are in it together. You know, if it's going to hurt the ranchers, then why would the Park Service go and conduct those studies that the citizens had to do? By the way, Liz, feel free to call in if you would like to call instead of just putting your comments up, but we do appreciate the comments too.
And you remind me, Ken Boulay, another great activist in this movement, is just now executive director of Turtle Island Restoration Network, TURN, sent it out an email this very morning, and in it was this wonderful quote from Ansel Adams, quote, "It is horrifying that we have to fight our own government. We have to fight our own government to save the environment."
Yeah.
Ray, could you mute your microphone, please? You're making noise, buddy, as you're doing your work.
I'm sorry about that.
Don't move, don't breathe, or
Jeez,
mute.
Jack.
Yep. I'm a hard ass.
I can hang up, but I just want to say one more thing. And I do believe that the movie, I'm not here just to pump Skyler up, but I'm able to zoom back down on the last 4 or 5 years. I'm back in California now. There are people that are still interested in getting behind this, and we could build the momentum again. And the way we did it, if we look back, we can see where we put the most pressure on the ranchers. And I think we need, the elk thing was a great entree because it's emotional and it's true and all that. But I think at some point you need to be really specific about that. You want the ranchers gone. How's that going to happen? And you have to lead people to that end. So speaking of being
specific, Ray, you know, I actually cut for the public version of Shame of Point Reyes. I cut out a lot of the suffering of the calves and the horror of the dairy industry just to fit in the other problems taking place in the park. And some people were like, oh, you know, that's too much like a vegan film than an overall film. So again, you have to protect people from possibly feeling feelings about the reality of ranching in order to get just to some of the other facts. And I'll say one other thing. Miyoko and her Mindful Eating Film Festival is responsible for helping that film break out. And ranchers were so upset about it that they were ripping down the signs in town advertising it and threatened not the dance palace, that they would cause them to go broke or bankrupt if they showed the film. Wow. Miyoko countered that by inviting the ranchers to it so that they could say their side, and none showed up.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, to me, that's a really good thing to look back on. It's probably the time we made them sweat the most, and we need to do more of that. I don't know how, but Jack, has a lot of creative ideas. He's done a lot of good things. I think together, you're better than the sum of your parts. I'd love to see us go back to before the pandemic and put up some more, because these guys they're ripe to be, pushed out. They need to go. It's environmentally, it's the reason they need to go. And, I'd just like to see it happen, as far as putting together more demonstrations. The film was put together. You made the film. That's a great thing right there. I don't want to lose sight of that. That did put a lot of pressure on them, and you suffered for it too. I mean, they probably know that film was the one thing that really made them sweat. I can't think of anything more. The things that happened after did, and again, maybe there could be another edited version of it. And you could play up some things, play down other things, get some footage of it in the summer, and put it out again. I don't know. But
well, Ray, Yeah, I agree with you. I've been working. I've lived in continual depression working on point race topics.
Yeah, I
I've
know.
got the next. I'm trying to crank out one that focuses only on the elk in the next month and a half, and then I'll move on to an ecological film that talks about how the ranchers are exactly the opposite of what needs to be taking place there if you actually care about restoring point rays. And then one that is unabashedly vegan and talking about the abuse of the animals. You know, I couldn't sleep for 3 years without thinking about the calves out there. And for a while, and then I removed myself, and it stopped being a daily thought. But now that it's winter again, and my dogs are tucked up close into my body every day, trying to get that comfort and that body heat, my mind immediately goes back to newborn mammals taken from their mothers, don't even have each other, but are in isolation as they enter the world and facing the point raised cold. All right, that's not what the show's about.
Hang on, Skyler. Just because you said that, and then we want to close out. But just what you're saying is newborn calves are taken away from their mother cows so that we get to take all the milk, and the calf gets none of her mother's milk. People don't know this, actually. They don't want to know it. So I just keep inserting little, because you brought it up, just to underline what you just said, which is critically important. And I hope you do a film like that, 30 minutes or so, and I'd help promote it and get it out there. The film that you don't want to see. Which is a great way to promote a film, right?
I agree. I think it could be a good thing. We just don't know what works the best. And I can tell you too that I went vegan after 3.5 years, and what made me go vegan was reading about little calves in Connecticut where they pushed them out in the cold and doing a lot of long distance hiking. When you're cold, it's scary. It's like you're going to die. You have no heater, nowhere to go, and to do that to a little calf, that's what made me go vegan on the spot. But I don't know. So I do connect with you guys, and I want you to know you have my support. So and I'm glad you're back in action as far as what we can see, Skyler. So thank you very much for doing the show, you guys.
Thank you, Ray. Thank you,
Ray.
You
want to plug the station and how people can subscribe and join our channels and follow us for our two different things as well as our joint thing, sir?
I will.
No, not you. Right, no, not you.
I'll do it too.
A host.
Well, Ray. Oh, I thought you were talking to Ray because Ray used to do a radio show. I didn't even know you were back. Are you doing your radio show again?
No, I did it for a year and then the pandemic but I'm back in California though. And I just want you to know, I could show up for things. I'm in California. I'm back in Petaluma. So
let me plug Ray. Ray, he didn't even mention, is making the most delicious chocolate called World Peace Chocolate. A tip of the hat to Will Tuttle, one of his mentors and mine as well. But it's really, really good chocolate. And Ray taught me that really good chocolate doesn't even have to contain milk. Who knew? Of any kind. Not cow milk, but not even oat milk. Right. It's just chocolate with a little bit of maple syrup or sorghum sweetener, whatever it is, organic, made in Petaluma where he lives, sold at the markets on Saturday afternoons. And it's just an amazing product. So Ray is doing that whole thing, which takes a huge amount of time. Also for him, like your filmmaking, Skyler, and my activism, a labor of love. So thank you, Ray, for doing what you do in the world.
Thank you, Ray. And I want to thank DMRCPA for becoming a member. I'm trying to find different ways to get a little bit of support for the voluntary work going over the years. So those of you who are doing that membership, I really appreciate it. And we appreciate everybody calling in. If you're still listening, the vegan version of the film is called Best Case Scenarios, because point raised is supposed to be the epitome of how wonderful dairy is. And it's horrifying enough that it makes some people go vegan on the spot.
I'm sorry, Skyler. If someone wanted to donate $25 a month to you, or $50 a month to you, or $100 a month to you to support your filmmaking and your activism and your fire, what would be the best way, simplest way for them to do that?
I have a PayPal. I think you can do a recurring payment on that, or a one-time. You can become a member of this YouTube channel, or you can have a tax-deductible donation.
Where do they find that button, or that PayPal button, or any of this for you?
That's all on the Shame of Point Ray's website, and there is a main menu called Donate. So if you go to
shameofpointraise.org.
Yeah.
shameofpointraised.org to support Skyler's work. Great. Thank you. You don't need to toot your own horn. I'm more than happy to do it for you. You deserve the tooting and the financial support. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. And for me, it's at treespiritproject.com/donate. Same drill. So thanks, guys, for people who want to do that. And regardless, please pass the show around in the recording if you're going to see it after the fact and share it. And Skyler, are we planning to be back next Tuesday, assuming heck doesn't freeze over, Tuesday the 26th at 9 a.m. Pacific?
I do intend. We intend. And Liz Dodge, thank you again. And I just want to invite you to call in again if you did want to call in. If you just wanted to message, that's fine also. Guess what? Don Rogers, who works with Miyoko, has organized a screening of The Shame of Point Raised for the Berkeley Hillside Club, December 18th.
Whoa.
So, yeah, let me give a plug to that.
We'll give another plug for it next Tuesday. I'm learning about that for the first time too. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm pretty terrible about promotion.
Well, that's what we have each other for, buddy, as you learn, as you go, but we can help each other. Yeah. Like that Star Trek where Lee Merriweather comes and is going to touch you and kill you. I am for
Jack,
you,
Jack, I envy you growing up watching the original Star Trek, and I don't envy anyone who's being born now, because the planet's not heading to a very pleasant place, and the dairy industry has a lot to do with that.
Sometimes I wish I was 20 years older so I wouldn't have to watch the next 10 years, but that's not what it is. So I will do what I can as an activist and work at least on the local or the California state level. There's always a way to be active. And for me, I don't do it as some altruistic imperative. I feel really depressed when I read bad news and see bad stuff going on in the world. And I'm, middle-aged white guy in Marin County, so I'm going to have it relatively easy. And people don't know I'm Jewish. Don't tell anybody.
Oh,
yeah, I know. Ixnay on the USJ. But I can work on the local level. And when I do, I feel like I'm empowered. It's the Edward Abbey line that passion without action is the ruination of the soul. So if you see something around you and love nature as much as I know you and I do, Skyler, every little creature out there in the wild that's unmanaged and not messed with by man's pesticides and herbicides and goat grazing and cattle grazing and wildfire management and all this nonsense, it always involves killing. Just knock all that off, and then you can advocate for those things. It makes you feel less upset at it all. At least for me, it does. Taking action.
That quote that you said is worthy of a topic.
Agreed. Let's do it. I would bring on George Werther and some other fiery people who taught me a bunch. Passion without action is the ruination of the soul. Said by a Harvard grad. He's the polar opposite of Steve Bannon, Edward Abbey, both out of Harvard.
Well, jot it down. Jot it down, or we will forget.
No, I got it down, baby. You got it.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, and I'm back Thursday. I don't know if you want to hop on, but I'll be back to talk about things somewhat similar. It always ties together, because I am a practicing ecologist who loves nature, and you can't help but see how all of it's tied together. Thank you for the great info from Caroline. Thank you, Caroline.
And she's asking, can people attend the hearing on Friday? And that's a great question. I think so. I don't have the link to it, but I think I can dig it out. I think it's going to be on Zoom in the morning on Friday. That's my understanding. So my email is, I'm not sure the best way to do this, but jack@treespiritproject.com. Email me, Caroline, and I will get the information for us, I guess. And yeah, I won't be able to have it in time for this, for the Friday, but I can get it to you if anybody wants to email me, jack@treespiritproject.com.
Let me put that up there.
Great. Thank you, sir. Beautiful. Wow. You're like a pro there, man. Okay.
Can you not type?
I don't know, but I'm not going to, I feel like I want to keep us to our hour, because we'll keep people like, okay, they're good for an hour. And then we're not, just because you and I can do an hour each separately and 4 hours together.
All right. So those who were not completely exhausted by my cynicism and ranting, I'll be back Thursday.
You speak the truth, man. It's just the, well, we're both speaking the truth and different flavors of it. So it's all good.
Thank you, everyone who tuned in today. And boy, we honestly, We want to know, what do you think is going to happen Friday? Do you think there'll be good news? And honestly, what do you think is the deal with Andrew Giacomini throwing a wrench in the legal process at the last minute? What is his angle?
You mean inviting the ranch workers into the negotiations to give them a seat at the table after completely ignoring their resistance and their rights and their wages for the last 20 years?
Correct.
Okay, just rephrasing. Got it.
And okay. Ray, you're typing in the private chat at the moment, just so you know. If you wanted your comments to be public, they are now in the private chat. But we'll all learn this as time goes on. But
yeah, I'm actually taking a screen snap of what I see. I also only see a private chat, not a way to do a public chat. But we'll figure it out. I really want to not overstay our welcome, if that's a way to put it.
Thanks, everybody, and see you next Tuesday. If not,